Walk down a city street in late August, and you can see the whole mystery in one tree. It rises out of a neat little square, cut into the sidewalk, ringed by concrete, washed in heat, coming off parked cars and glass, lit at midnight by street lamps. And by the end of summer, its leaves are already crisp at the edges. Some have dropped weeks early. The crown is thinner than it was in June. People pass it every day and barely register it. If they do notice, they say something simple: bad luck, not enough water, weak tree. But a few miles away, in a patch of woodland living under the same sky, trees of the same species may still be full, dark green and steady. And urban forestry research, including work tracked through institutions like the U.S. Forest Service, has repeatedly found that isolated street trees often die younger than their forest counterparts, sometimes by roughly a decade. That sounds backwards, doesn't it? You would think city trees are the protected ones. They get planted on purpose. Sometimes they get watered. They are surrounded by people. Forest trees have storms, insects, competition, falling branches, and long, dry spells. Surely the wild should be harder. And yet for many trees, the city is harsher than the forest. The reason is not one dramatic killer. It's a stack of invisible stresses that slowly push the tree into a permanent emergency state. Most of us miss that because we're not good at reading plant distress. Humans are tuned to movement, faces, cries, blood. A wounded animal tells us what's wrong in ways our brains instantly understand. A tree closes pores. He shrinks leaves, drops them early, and we call it seasonal. Botanists sometimes call this plant blindness, the habit of seeing plants as background instead of behavior. But trees are all behavior. They just do it slowly and silently. Researchers in plant signaling, including people like Stefano Mancuso and many plant physiologists before him, have helped make something clear. Plants do not have brains or neurons, but they do process information constantly. A tree is sensing light, gravity, touch, temperature, moisture, chemicals in the soil, damage in its bark, and cues from nearby organisms. It runs that information through electrical signals, pressure changes, and hormones. So when a city tree starts looking tired, that is usually not random decline. It is response. If roots detect dry or salty soil, and they can trigger production of a stress hormone called abscisic acid. That hormone travels upward and tells the leaves to close their stomata, the microscopic pores that let carbon dioxide in and water vapor out. Closing those pores can save water. It can also starve the tree of the carbon it needs to make sugars. In other words, the tree survives the short term by compromising the long term. What looks passive is often triage. And the first place that triage begins is underground. A forest tree does not just grow in soil. It grows in a living sponge. The ground beneath a forest is layered with fallen leaves, fungi, microbes, decaying wood, channels left by old roots, pockets of air, stored moisture, and countless organisms constantly reshaping the structure of the soil. Rain can soak in, oxygen can move, roots can explore. In a city, that entire world is often stripped away. The soil may be compacted by construction, foot traffic, vehicles, or repeated disturbance. That matters because roots don't only need water, they need oxygen. When soil gets packed tight, the pores that hold air collapse. Water runs off hard surfaces into drains instead of entering the root zone. Then when water does arrive, it may arrive as a rush, not a reservoir. So the tree can swing between drought and waterlogging, between thirst and suffocation. Now imagine two young trees of the same species. One sends roots into cool, loose forest soil, surrounded by fungal partners and buffered humidity. The other is confined to a narrow pit between sidewalk and road, with its roots hitting rubble, pipes, compacted fill, and heat. Same species. Totally different body experience. That's why the leaves are such a revealing clue. Leaves are not decorations. They're the tree's solar panels, lungs, and cooling system all at once. In healthy conditions, water pulled up from the roots exits through the stomata, and that flow helps cool the leaf while moving minerals and maintaining pressure through the whole plant. But under repeated urban drought stress, that flow becomes risky. Plant physiologists like Melvin Tyree and John Sperry helped show how severe water stress can cause hydraulic failure in trees. The water column inside the xylem, the tree's plumbing, is held under tension. If that tension gets too intense, tiny air bubbles can form, a process called cavitation. Think of it like an embolism in a straw. Enough of those, and the transport system stops working properly. So, when a city tree shows scorched leaf edges, wilt, or sudden branch die back after heat, you may be seeing a plumbing crisis written across the canopy. By the time the damage is obvious, the struggle is already deep inside the wood. Then, there's the heat itself. Not ordinary summer heat, urban heat. Pavement, brick, metal, and glass absorb sunlight all day and release it slowly after sunset. That raises air temperature, but it also does something more intimate. It turns the space around the tree into a distorted microclimate. Forest trees evolved with shade beneath them, humidity around them, and cooler soils protected by leaf litter and neighboring plants. City trees often stand over exposed soil, if they have exposed soil at all, while their roots bake near asphalt and concrete. Even the night may not fully cool. And when nights stay warm, trees get less relief from daytime stress. Add bright artificial light, and some species can experience blurred seasonal signals, delaying leaf drop or changing the timing of dormancy. It sounds small, it isn't. Trees live by timing. When to open, when to shut down, when to harden for winter. When the calendar written in light and temperature gets scrambled, the tree pays for it later. Now layer in chemistry. Road salt is a classic winter insult in cold cities, and it doesn't just burn roots in a simple way. It changes the osmotic balance around the root, which means water becomes harder to absorb. The tree can be surrounded by moisture and still struggle to drink. Salt can also interfere with nutrient uptake and accumulate where roots are already stressed. Air pollution adds another burden. The ozone can damage leaf tissues and reduce photosynthetic performance. Particulates can coat surfaces. None of this needs to kill the tree outright to matter. It only has to shave a little off the tree's margin of safety. Then come the wounds. Lawnmowers, cars, utility work, pruning, bark impacts, roots cut during construction. Here, the work of arborist and researcher Alex Shigo changed how we understand trees. Trees do not heal the way animals do. They compartmentalize. They wall off injured tissue to limit decay and infection. Every wound becomes a sealed history, not a full reset. In a forest, injuries are part of life. In a city, they can become relentless. Repeated damage means repeated defensive spending. More energy diverted from growth, more entry points for fungi or insects. And less capacity left when heat or drought arrives. And maybe the deepest difference is one we almost never see, because it's less about the tree as an individual, and more about the tree as a participant. Forest trees are not solitary pillars. They are embedded in communities. Their roots share soil with an enormous web of fungi and microbes. Research associated with Suzanne Simard and many other forest ecologists has shown that mycorrhizal networks can move resources and chemical signals between plants under some conditions. That idea has been simplified a lot in popular culture, but the core point is solid. A forest is not just many separate trees standing near each other. It is a biological system full of exchanges. Nutrients cycle through leaf litter. Moisture is held in organic matter. Shade moderates temperature. Neighboring plants influence humidity and wind. Microbial partners help roots access phosphorus and other nutrients. Even the dead feed the living. A street tree, by contrast, is often planted alone, in disturbed soil, with fallen leaves removed, fungal networks broken by excavation, and root zones repeatedly severed or sealed. It loses more than space. It loses relationship. A forest tree has competition, yes, But it also has context. A city tree is often expected to perform the work of a mature ecosystem while being denied the underground life that makes that possible. That is the part that should change how we read these trees emotionally. A struggling city tree is not necessarily weak. It is often doing something extraordinary. It is making hundreds of micro-adjustments every day to stay alive in a place its body was never designed for. It closes pores earlier. It grows less. It sheds leaves before it wants to. It diverts sugars to defense. It slows expansion. It may even become primed by earlier stress, changing later responses through shifts in chemistry and gene expression. Not memory in the human sense, but biological remembering. The tree carries its past summers inside its future behavior. So no, a tree is not thinking like a person, but it is not passively enduring either. It is computing risk with living tissue. It is deciding moment by moment what to sacrifice to remain standing. This is also why city trees so often seem to die all of a sudden. Usually they don't. Usually they die by accumulation. A little less root space, a little more heat, a little less infiltration after a sidewalk repair, a pruning wound, a summer drought, salt in winter. A pest or fungus arriving when the tree is already short on stored carbohydrates. Each problem alone might be survivable. Together, they become a shortened life. What we call sudden decline is often the final visible chapter of a much longer invisible story. And the warning signs are there if you know how to read them. Leaves smaller than usual. Brown margins in midsummer, early fall color when it isn't fall. A crown that looks thin from a distance. New shoots erupting from the trunk or base as the tree tries to compensate. Cracks in bark. One side of the canopy underperforming. These are not just cosmetic flaws. They are messages from a distributed intelligence under pressure. When we ignore those messages, we lose far more than a piece of streetscape. Mature trees cool neighborhoods, soften noise, slow stormwater, feed insects, shelter birds, and change how human nervous systems feel in a place. Study after study has linked urban green space with lower stress and better mental well-being. But a mature tree is not instantly replaceable. A sapling planted after a mature tree dies is not an equal swap. Ecologically, thermally, psychologically, it may take decades to recover what was lost. So when a city tree dies young, that is not just a landscaping failure. It is a record of design choices. It tells the truth about the ground we built, the heat we trapped, the soil we compacted, the roots we cut, the biological relationships we erased. The tree becomes a witness. Its shortened life is evidence. And this is where the bigger lesson lands. We tend to see plants as the quiet part of life, the backdrop, the decoration. But city trees expose how wrong that is. Their leaves are decisions. Their scars are memories. Their timing is data. Their decline is communication. A forest tree and a city tree may share the same species name, but they are not living the same reality. One grows inside a buffered, relational, self-reinforcing ecosystem. The other is often asked to stand alone in a heat trap, in a narrow box of stressed soil, and still provide shade, beauty, cooling, and calm for everyone around it. We ask it to perform health while surrounding it with chronic stress. Then when it falters, we call it fragile. Maybe the most honest thing to say is this: forest trees do not simply live longer because the wild is kinder. They often live longer because the forest still speaks their language. The city, too often, does not. So the next time you pass a tree in a sidewalk cut out with thin leaves, with premature color, or a crown that seems to be quietly fading, don't see a decoration that failed. See an organism running emergency protocols. See roots searching for oxygen in packed ground. See hormonal signals racing from soil to leaf. See water columns straining through hot xylem. See a living body trying to coordinate without complaint in a habitat built for cars, concrete, and speed. Once you see that, it's hard to unsee. Ordinary trees start to look less like scenery and more like survivors. If there's a city tree near you that you suddenly see differently after this, Tell me about it in the comments. And if you want more science-backed stories that reveal what plants are really doing beneath the obvious, subscribe. Because some of the most profound dramas in nature are happening right in front of us, rooted in place, and almost nobody has learned how to read them.